Back in the land of insanity. Funny, oh shit. I've got a battery to do this. It's weird when I go and dive into my northern life, which I like to call it. And northern life, man, rural life, it's like that is the real world to me. And there's no bullshit there. There's just none. And everybody's existing, everybody's doing their thing, everybody's happy and content and not wrapped up in this insane horse shit that mainstream has a majority of the population focused on. Anyway, I'm not rambling about that, but I'm just getting at is when you jump, I always encourage people to jump out of your bubble. You have to jump out of your bubble, meaning leave the country. Whatever, go away. You need to leave your current existence and observe it from a distance. It's like jump out of your bubble and you gotta look down in your bubble and see what's going on with more clarity. And that works for me anyway. When I go away and then and I get to do exactly what I'm meant to do full time in a way, like daily. And it clears your mind, it clears your vision. The sad thing is that when you jump back into having the global shit show stuffed in your face every time you turn around, it the unfortunate of some of the times, the unfortunate of the times is just so blatant. It's frustrating. You want to fix it, and you can't fix it. I guess you can try, but I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe I'm just going through a little bit of a kick in the face with current various so-called realities, now that I'm back. Something to be said about living in the absolute real world, being healthy. You move your body daily, you move your body, you move your mind, you use all your senses. It's such a healthy thing. And like I said before, unfortunately, it also makes you become very aware. And that can be challenging at times for what you become aware of. Some of you are getting what I'm saying, some of you are thinking, get on with it, so I'll get on with it. Here I am. Oops, why does this phone keep on doing weird shit? Let's see, I'm gonna have to put that battery on a slow drip, so hopefully this lasts long enough to get some more voices heard, which is very, very, very important, especially today. I will tell you what. All right, what's this? All right, there's a bunch of politicals. I get emails of all sorts of different topics, so I have to. All right, what's this one? A brief story and theory. All right, let's start off with this. From a doctor. Steve, thanks for what you do and who you are. The no-nonsense approach and inclusive, appreciative manner you conduct yourself is both refreshing and inspiring. Thank you for the kind words. I've had an encounter, possibly two, in the 70s, which I'll relate briefly. But in the face of the stories told by your good self, this one is rather tame. It's more my theory that I'd like to simply out forward for consideration by yourself and listeners. That my first encounter, such as it is, by way of background, I grew up on a dead-end street with my backyard next to the woods in northern New Jersey and spent my time mostly in nature. Did a lot of fishing, but my family wasn't a gun family, so I didn't learn about all that and hunting until I was an adult. That said, I developed the capacity and art of how to be still and adjust myself to surroundings from a young age. I've always been the one in any group who would see the momentary glimpse of a deer, rabbit, fox, or a bobcat, etc., when no one else did. I just had radar. Still do. Anyway, when I was around 30, I found myself in Oregon, married and going to a chiropractic school in the Portland area. We lived out of town in the Columbia River Gorge and used to hike every weekend. One weekend, we drove out toward Cascade Locks and crossed the bridge to the Washington side of the river. We stopped at Beacon Rock State Park. Beacon Rock was this monolith maybe 800 feet tall that the Lewis and Clark expedition climbed to get a peek down the Columbia River. There's a hiking trail around it. To make a long story short, we parked the cars and had to walk under the railroad trestle to get to the rock. I noticed a rail bed was a good 12 to 15 feet tall, made out of packed earth and coarse gravel. Well, we climbed the rock, which was quite steep, and enjoyed the view both up and down the river. On the way back down, we stopped for a breather about 2/3 of the way down and had a nice view east upriver. Beacon Rock was in Skamania, Washington on the river and just below Mount St. Helens. This was a year before it blew. While gazing out, I happened to catch something I initially thought was a large man with a dog literally leap up that railroad embankment in 2 strides. I thought, holy crap, who's that? And then it crossed the meadow with cows in it. I changed the who to a what. It had super long arms, abs, and a long stride that reminded me of the old Keep On Trucking poster. The dog ambulated like a chimp. So I soon realized it was probably a Sasquatch. It walked between the cows, which were in the pasture, allowing me to calculate its size. It must have stood 8 to 9 feet tall based on my thumbnail proportions, given the cows are about 5 feet high at the shoulder. We watched it for a few minutes. Wow, that's a long time. A few minutes is a long time. It had gone towards the river to a little slough which ran at a diagonal, then squatted down. I could see all black, hairy, and a bit of glint from the sun on his face. Strangely, I got a kind of timeless sense of peace. We decided to leave it alone and not report it. We returned the following weekend to scout the area and look for hair or footprints, but it had rained extensively that week, and we got nothing. My other encounter was simply that I woke up one night with a tremendous sense of evil and foreboding, and I saw a large dark shadow outside moving. I got the message to not come out, stay inside. I was living in the hills at a place called Mountain Home Ranch at the time, and it was surrounded by the coastal range of Northern California. I've since come to understand it was probably one of them, but at the time I wasn't sure what. Now for my theory. There's a science called epigenetics. Epigenetics, simply speaking, it addresses the notion that our environment can and does change our genetic expression over time. It's the very mechanism and adaptation which has been called natural selection. It can commonly be seen in hogs, which have gone feral, and within a few generations have changed their physical expression radically from the barnyard animal its ancestor was. In fact, it can often take forensics to tell the difference between a true wild boar and his feral cousins. Yeah, I'm aware of that one. It doesn't take long for them to get covered in fur, does it? What if humans had the same capacities? What if, over the millennia, certain humans were either driven out of or voluntarily left human civilization and reverted to the wild? Then over time, they need and become a bit by bit a distinctive species like feral hogs. As for their large size and sometimes supernatural capabilities, the size could be an adaptation of the strongest of these breeding together over time, and supernatural abilities are certainly available among normal Homo sapiens. Just look at the disciplines of yoga and Taoist practices. There's much out of the ordinary accomplished by certain types of physical training. A good example of this is Wim Hof, the Iceman who can withstand the cold and even bacterial toxins. I've been practicing his techniques for a few months now. I'm currently 73 and have a physique and health of a strong 50-year-old. I'm certain we all have many more abilities than we know based on my own experience. But that's a story for another day. Use my name if you wish. Best regards, David E. David, appreciate your input, man. Appreciate your sharing of your sighting. I caught myself wondering what the cattle's reaction was when that thing just walked among them across the pasture. If they were shitting themselves running or just kept on eating. But then again, cows aren't the smartest animal out there. And then those are interesting theories. A lot of people are going to be nodding their head or shaking their head, whichever one affects the individual the way it does. But I don't know. For me, I can't seem to shake the pre-drop of information of the apparent fact, that our DNA was intentionally manipulated. The DNA was intentionally manipulated 15,000 years ago. So we'll see. I can't wait to get my hands on that report, what they found. So we'll see. It definitely is a good one to toss out there, isn't it? I mean, and on that note, you might find this interesting. A few years back, I did a backpack hunt guiding. A friend of mine actually from Alabama, and we both noticed at the end of the 3 weeks, and we went through blizzards, harshness. We went, I don't even remember how many miles. It was over 100 miles. We had a little counter with us, but anyway, when you get out, we both noticed right away when you go have a shower, it's like, holy shit, man, I'm way hairier. And honest to God, I've heard that from a handful of friends that you actually, for some strange reason, you appear or you are getting, by the end of that trip, your whole body is more hairier. Go figure, can't explain it, never gave it too much attention, but I've noticed it. And I'm not the only one. So it is interesting what happens to us out there once we fully throw ourselves out there, right? It's interesting. All right, where's another one? All right, here's another one. This is the title, One at a Time. Thanks again for sending that email, man. And again, like I say to everybody, you come across something that the people can benefit from, you send it to us. And all those skills you mentioned, obviously, it's obvious we originally were intended to. We were possibly created with all of those special skills mentioned by you and more, and the dirty, filthy pricks have intentionally suppressed them out of us, without a doubt. There's nothing worse than a highly skilled, confident, independent human being when it comes to the eyes of the people who want to control, right? All right, One at a Time is the title of this one. Steve, I'm hesitant to write in. I got a few things to share. I'm just going to share in separate emails to keep it short. Big mistake. Everybody, don't do that, all right? You get it all in one. I don't like typing. I just recently heard an email you shared that gave me confirmation of something my girlfriend and I have seen in my own backyard. The email that triggered me to share was from A Hunter's Life is Forever Changed for November 7th, 2021. Upload. The email by Michael from Land O'Lakes, Florida. He's talking about the owls. My name is Martin B. I don't care if you share my name. I live in Ohio, far from Florida, but I believe maybe we have seen the same being. I don't really care if anyone believes me. I know what I've seen. My girlfriend is my confirmation that I've seen it. Confirmation from Michael is that I could have swore it was a big owl. And I now know for sure. I live in the city with a patch of woods behind my house. It's not a real big patch, but it's a patch in the middle of the city. I get deer, raccoons, groundhogs, squirrel, and apparently owl men. To keep this short, this is how it happened. My girlfriend was doing the dishes, looking out the window when she seen it first. She called me over to look out the window to ask me what I thought it was she was seeing. I looked out the window to see what she was seeing, and I felt like I couldn't really focus my eyes on it. And I have 20/20 vision, so it's kind of weird to me. After looking at it for a couple of minutes, I asked her what she thought she was seeing, because I'm seeing a big owl head looking over some thick brush in the back part of my yard in the woods. I still felt like I couldn't focus my eyes on it. So I decided to walk outside and see what it was. I know everyone probably won't believe me because I don't have pictures or film. I honestly couldn't tell you why I don't. I usually have my phone on me because I'm always seeing weird things around me, usually in the sky. For some reason, I walked out there, walked in the middle of the yard, looked at it for about a minute, and then walked back in the house and pretty much forgot about it. That's weird. It was so weird. I got a really good look at it. It was maybe 50 feet from it. The only difference from his description is this was brown with a lighter face and black speckles. It had feathers, was really big, was thinking at least 7 feet. What? Could only see the head from inside and could see the head and midsection from where I was outside. It didn't move. It just stared at me. I wasn't scared. I wasn't really thinking anything, honestly. I can remember everything like it was yesterday. I just came back in and told my girl it was a big owl and pretty much forgot about it. We went back and looked about a half hour later and it was gone. I really can't tell you why it played out like it did. It was the weirdest thing. I can't really explain it. Anyways, that's the first share, definitely not the most exciting. It's been bothering me since I seen it because I have not heard of anyone else seeing this being. I have a few more emails I can share and some pictures of other beings to share when I write back in. This is way more than Sabe. There is way more than Sabe in the woods. Thank you for doing what you do. I know this is helping people because it helped me. Keep doing what you're doing because the truth is going to come out and I believe it's going to be soon. I have my own theories and thoughts on some things I will share in later emails also. Okay, man. It's a strange one, especially reaction, but we've heard that reaction. I've heard that reaction from people that I know that's seen some crazy shit. You know, Sarah and her whole entire family in the middle of winter, pitch blackout, and they saw a white, bright light lighting up the forest out back in the back 40 where there's no roads, nobody, but there's nothing but spruce and moose. And they all looked at it like, holy shit, and they went back in and that was it. Right, carry on. It's odd, isn't it? It's odd how many human beings have that reaction. And then, and also when you follow up, when you ended your email with, you know, keep going, the truth is going to come out soon. Well, the truths are coming out with every single email. That's what my brain says to me now. When you hear the truth from the people, there's not much more for us to wait for. You know what I mean? Because the people who are over here, who possibly have the majority of the control to feed the majority of the people information, well, they're just people. They're no better than you or I. They're no more important than you or I. And they do not deserve any more or less attention than you and I. So my feelings are, when the people speak, the truth comes out, and that's it. Right? We have to somehow stop. I mean, we're all guilty of it, but we have to somehow turn it around and take that power away from a group of people that's over there. Because they're just people. And they're having their ride called life as well as us. And they're in no position as a group to decide when or what to dictate to me what's up. Right? It's only the experience and the knowledge gained by individual equal people, shared with me, shared with you. That's truth. I'm babbling. I'm a 2 coffee babbler this morning. A 2 coffee babbler. Here we go. Thanks again for sending that in, man. And I'm looking forward to you sharing more when I can find them. All right, here's another one. My 2 encounters and the in-between over 35 years. Hello, Steve. Enjoy your videos. Thank you for giving people like us a place to talk about them. My story took over 35 years to unfold, and I apologize for the length, but I feel that all the parts of my story are very relevant to the subject of all things Bigfoot. For the longest time, I couldn't decide if I should report this sighting or not. The reason being is I'm the once young 11-year-old boy from the 1985 Class A sighting in Ozark County, Missouri, that reported, unfortunately, that sighting 20 plus years ago to the BF blah blah O website. Like I said, it was the winter of '85 and I was sitting in the back seat of my aunt and uncle's car coming home from a community get-together / music party in the late hours around 11:30 p.m. to 12 a.m. My relatives lived about 2 miles down a county road. Right before the entrance to the driveway was an old dry creek bed that would flood whenever it rained heavy. So it was always full of large rocks and always bumpy as it did not have a cement slab to drive over it. Directly to the right of the dry creek was a driveway from an old farmer that was well known in the community and had built the house sometime in the 30s to 40s. It had been abandoned for years, but the house remained in relative good condition. Me and a friend had been in the home earlier that year in the summer. In the living room, there was a very long pile of leaves all piled up in the corner of the room. Me and my friend assumed because the window was broken out, the window had blown the leaves into the house. We went on about our day with nothing special happening. Well, fast forward to winter. I'm sitting in the back seat with my aunt and uncle's eldest son. It's about 5 years old. He sat behind his father and I behind my aunt, and she was holding their newborn son that was born in August. Immediately to the right of the car, as my uncle slowed down to cross the dry creek bed, the old driveway to the old abandoned farmhouse was to our right, just a few feet from the dry creek. As my uncle slowed the car to a slow crawl, we see something standing at the edge of the road on the driveway that acts like it wants to cross the road, but almost doesn't, as we notice it short step itself as it decided to cross anyway, as if to say, well, they've already seen me now. It was approximately 8 feet tall, bright red hair, very long arms, and looked almost longer than its legs. No hair on the face or on the hands. As it passed in front of the car, it turned its head as if to nod to us, saying, "Yes, I see you and you see me. Let me cross the road and I'll go on my way and leave each other alone." My uncle turned the car's headlights slightly to the left, and we could see it, staying to the right of the creek bed. My uncle's yard had been eroded from flooding, and the yard was probably 6 feet from the creek bed, with a barbed wire fence serving as a boundary. If I were to have to try to climb up into that yard that way, I'd have had at least a couple of feet to get a foothold to pull myself up. I know because I tried to climb into the yard that way before. Anyway, we see this Bigfoot in one fail swoop jump. Must have been tall. We see this Bigfoot in one fail swoop jump up onto the yard and over the fence. It wasn't running, but it wasn't taking a slow troll either. It walked through the yard, past their house, up the hill in the yard, and went straight to the gate that led into the pasture, and from what we could see, jumped the gate in one motion and was gone. I was scared to death, to say the least. The only other time I grew concerned was when I was in the woods at my home with my parents, but I'd built some teepees and a log cabin to hang out in, as the woods was my playground growing up. One day while I was clearing some brush, I could hear something walking as I was walking. When I stopped, it stopped. I did this action about 3 times, but on the 4th time when I stopped, it kept walking. What caused me to worry was I could hear it getting closer and closer, but I could see nothing. I cleared the brush out in those woods from all the trees at height as high as 6 or 7 feet and cut all the underbrush, rose bushes, etc. So visibility should not have been an issue, and where my little hideouts were built along an old wood cutting road, which I'd kept clear as well. However, I could never see what was walking closer and faster to me and my cousin. Funny thing is this is the cousin that sat in the back seat with me during my first Bigfoot encounter. I told him to run, and I would stay to fend off whatever was almost upon us. After I saw my younger cousin getting close to the yard, I held my hatchet and began to run for my life. I quickly caught up to my cousin, and without missing a beat, I scooped him up, carrying him the rest of the way. I yelled into the woods, once safely in my yard, as if to say to whomever was in the woods, trying to scare me and my little cousin, that I was not scared. I was going through puberty at this point, so I was full of piss and vinegar, like most country boys at that age. My cousin was my junior by 6.5 years, and I was beginning to work out hauling hay, mowing yards, and lifting weights. So I was almost certain, had the fight been fair, I could have defended myself and my cousin. But I didn't really want to if I didn't have to. Seeing one Bigfoot is rare, but to have seen 2, I would imagine it's unheard of. Since 1985, I've grown up, been married for 27 years, father of 3 sons, and now a grandfather. I, with my parents, moved north from Ozark County, where my first sighting took place, to the adjoining county of Douglas, just before my 14th birthday. I returned to Ozark County to begin my family And about 20 years ago, moved back to Douglas County, where I currently reside, west of the small town of 3,000 people, the county seat. My wife and I purchased a nice sizable tract of land, less than 8/10 of a mile, near a small river/large creek with good fishing, so wildlife is abundant. One day, late spring, early summer in 2015, my oldest son had just graduated from high school the year prior and was working a day job, but still lived with his mother, and I along with his 2 younger brothers. However, on this day, it was my son and I at home on that afternoon around 4 to 5 p.m. at the latest. My son, unfortunately, had become a smoker, and while he's an adult at 19 years of age, we didn't allow him to smoke in the house, which later, thank goodness, has quit. I've always had a very close relationship with my sons, and I've always enjoyed long conversations about various things. As we were talking about what I do not remember, my son said he is going to smoke. I stood up, walked with him, as he opened the front door, venting tobacco smoke. We were both positioned to see straight out across the yard toward a small dry branch, at the edge of my yard. A few years back, a female black bear with 2 cubs less than a quarter mile from our house had been seen in a tree in the parking lot of an old abandoned church with several big oak trees. We'd been on the lookout for possible black bear sightings, as they are somewhat rare, but hadn't seen one, or at least that's what we initially thought. My son opened the door and we both saw almost instantaneously a black figure standing on 2 legs, looking straight at the house. Just as we saw it, it saw us and squatted in a downward movement, still on 2 legs. My son said, "Dad, is that a bear?" When he said that, the black animal turned, still on 2 legs, and ran in a southwesterly direction from our house. I remember thinking this should go down on all 4s, as I was thinking black bear as well, but it never did, as long as we could see it. My son, almost in shock, said, "Dad, was that what I think it was?" And I said, "I thought black bear too at first, but when it ran away, it never went to 4 legs." I pointed out that it stayed upright and ran away on 2 legs. My son said that he noticed it never went on to all 4s as well, and stated rhetorically, "Bears don't run on 2 legs, do they?" I told him, "No, they don't." He then looks at me with bewilderment, and I could see he was coming to the same conclusion just as I had done all those years ago. We had just seen a black-haired sabe. It looked approximately 6 feet tall and maybe 400 plus pounds. We talked amongst ourselves for a bit on what we'd just seen and how we couldn't believe what had just happened. I remember thinking like it was the creature's thoughts. "Oh shit, they saw me. I'm going to be in trouble." Like something a kid would say after he was found with his hand in the cookie jar. I've come to think it was the creature's thoughts in my head. It's only after watching you tell the various stories that I was aware of the sabe being able to communicate with you without words through the mind. So I think it was a young one and was simply curious about us and my home and grew scared when we saw him/it. I told my wife what our son and I had seen that day. The next day I decided to walk out to where it was standing and look for tracks or sign. Stepping down into the little dry branch, I could see a smeared footprint in the very damp, almost wet soil, then turned where it had appeared to be seeing it. Then turned to where it had appeared to be seeing it. Had a clearer view of our home based upon where it had stood when I saw it. There's no paragraphs. This is all. It's the way of saying it, I don't know. Sometimes it'll confuse me. There's a perfect little rectangular space in which you could view my home unobstructed, and I saw a green branch that had been pinched cleanly off from an overhanging branch and laid it perfectly on the branch below. I placed the branch where it was clearly connected to the tree it had grown from. It was the one branch that would have affected the perfect view of our home. After several months without further incident, I received a phone call from my cousin that lived approximately 6 miles due west of us. Our highway is a small 2-lane road that reads pavement ends, and it turns in a gravel road. If you travel the road all the way, it takes you to a similar highway, and my cousin lived southwest of the intersection of said gravel road and small 2-lane highway. Strangely enough, my cousin I was talking with was in the car back in 1985 during my first encounter with a Bigfoot. He'd sent me some pictures on his cell phone. He raised fighting chickens and had a Great Pyrenees dog to protect them from predators. It just snowed several inches, approximately 8 to 10 inches, through the night. My cousin went outside to feed and water his chickens, but as he walked closer to where his roosters were, staked to the ground, he saw a leg attached to the lead rope, but no rooster. As he looked further, some had been ripped out of the ground, which were staked with concrete, but pulled freely and thrown out into the pasture that was around his yard. He was very puzzled, to say the least. He then went to the chicken coop to feed and water his hens. Upon entering the coop, he looked upon a macabre scene. All his hens had been savagely killed. None of them had been eaten, only killed, torn to pieces. Some ripped in half, but all were dead. As he left the coop, he called for his dog, but to no avail. He then looked for his dog, a Great Pyrenees, and found her dead. He went back inside, called the Missouri Department of Conservation. Before the agent arrived, he went back outside there and he saw prints, as if someone was walking barefoot in the snow across his yard by the dead chickens, only to cross the fence, and then said the tracks just disappeared. Upon the conservation agent's arrival, they began to discuss what could have killed his flock of birds. The agent said it appeared as if his dog had been grabbed by her tail or her back legs and swung back and forth on the ground like a rag doll, completely breaking and smashing almost every bone in the dog's body. The agent placed trail cameras in an attempt to catch what possibly was responsible for the death of my cousin's entire flock of chickens and his dog. After 2 weeks, the camera failed to capture anything that could have possibly done the deed. He told my cousin that the only thing he could think of that made said tracks was a large primate or a person with extremely large feet, but couldn't reconcile why someone would do it barefoot. He also said that there was another explanation, but he couldn't say that that was what it was, as it has not been proven to exist by science. Bigfoot, yeah? Fuck science. What I find to be most curious is when I had my first sighting back in '85. I was with my aunt, uncle, and their oldest son that was sitting in the back with me. My aunt was in the front holding the newborn 3 to 4 month old son. The baby is the cousin referred to in my account of said events, now a grown man. Fast forward 2015, 2016, then approximately 2 months later, upon returning home approximately at 9:30 or 10 p.m., my wife and I turned off the vehicle and exited the truck. Almost instantly, after shutting the doors, we heard a loud call coming from the woods, from something I've never heard in the Missouri woods before. My wife asked me immediately, what was that? I simply told her, you know what it was. She ran into the house. A couple months passed, and before going to bed, my wife went outside to check on the chickens and make sure they were all in the coop. When she turned the doorknob and opened the door, she witnessed the same macabre scene my cousin had experienced months earlier. And dear, I don't know how to say this, but all the chickens are dead. Of course, my response was, what? I immediately put on my shoes, grabbed my flashlight, my sidearm, and went outside to investigate it for myself. I turned the knob to the door on the coop, opening the door, and all my chickens were indeed dead, ripped to pieces, ripped in half. A horrible death for all my birds. However, not one bird had been eaten, just as the event at my cousin's home. Any typical known predator here in Missouri would have at least eaten some or a great portion of the dead birds. I then asked if the door had been closed properly. My wife said yes. I had to turn the knob to open the door. I did an inspection of the coop and running an area for holes in the wire as for holes dug underneath by a predator to gain entry into the coop, and I found nothing. 2 things struck me about the incident. One was whatever killed my chickens could open a door and by default had to have opposable thumbs. So that ruled out any natural predators in my mind. Number 2, second, was where I put the recently purchased pre-assembled chicken coop. I had the delivery man place it at the edge of my yard exactly where I and my oldest son had seen what I believed to be a juvenile 6-foot-tall solid black Bigfoot looking directly at my house. Then lastly, about 1 month later, we let our female English bulldog outside to use the restroom. I heard her growling and barking at something which was uncommon for her. She was a very gentle-natured dog, and when she barked at something outside, it usually meant there was indeed something outside in the yard. However, all at once she fell silent. My wife went to the door and let her back in. She didn't come back to the porch despite repeated calls for her. Still no dog. Then my wife saw her through the ambient light from the lights on said porch in the driveway, and she wasn't moving. I put on my shoes, grabbed my flashlight, sidearm, and went to investigate, and my 2-year-old healthy English bulldog lay dead in the driveway. As I was preparing to bury her, I looked at her and could see a massive swollen area on her left side of her head, upon where it looked as if she had received a blow so hard in the head it killed her almost instantly. Where the suspected blow had taken place, it has swollen and began to turn dark shades of purple. From feeling my dog's face, it was pliable, feeling as if her bones in that side of her skull had been broken. She had no other marks in the rest of her body. I've had chickens since, and until recently, no mass killings by predators until just a week ago. As for dogs that I allow to spend any significant time outside, it's not without supervision. 2 sightings of Bigfoot within a 35-year span. According to Bigfoot research and what I've seen on television, podcasts, YouTube, and reading countless eyewitness accounts, etc., it is extremely rare to see a Bigfoot, let alone 2 distinctly different individuals, is it not? I'd rather have won the lottery twice if I had to pick a rare event to participate in. I've had no further incidents since. Just reading your comments below and watching your videos over the last couple of months, I now realize why me and my cousin played paintball during my high school years would come to haunt me to this very day. We'd put on our safety gear and I'd hit my head on the ductwork in his basement, making the top of my head very sore. I chose not to wear my hat. My cousin, however, did wear a hat that day as we were walking into the woods to start our game of Capture the Fort. After the game was over, having never actually been together during the match, I saw him wearing the ball cap and aiming at it while he was on his designated territory. Then he makes a break for the fort. He then sees me with the hat on, and he's using it to take aim at me. We meet up, and I walk the last 56 yards out of the woods together. Then we stop before leaving the woods at the pasture's edge. We stopped together for a drink of water and to rest a moment. As it was summertime and hot, and while I wore protective face gear, I did not wear a hat. However, I take the hat off to wipe the sweat from my forehead, and I look at my forearm to see how hot I truly was. I seeing my right hand holding hat. Hold on a minute. Excuse me. However, I take my hat off to wipe the sweat from my forehead and look at my forearm to see how hot I truly was. I see my right hand holding the hat. I turn to my cousin. Dude, what am I doing with your hat? He looks at me and says, that's your hat, man. He reaches for his head as if to find his hat. Wait, I didn't wear a hat today. I told him we'd wore it out here, and I saw him on the other side of the creek wearing it and gave his location away. And I started shooting paintballs at him. Okay, he's got the at sign and and sign, and it's turning into signs and not letters. I'm screwing up. This is a lengthy one. Please be patient. I apologize. I'm not a professional. I started shooting paintballs at him because I could see the hat. Oh yeah, you're right. I was wearing that hat. How'd you get it? I remembered. I reminded him about hitting my head on the ductwork in the basement. I wasn't wearing a hat today. He's like, man, when I was in the fort, I saw you wearing the hat. The gold on it gave your position away. It's then I remembered he wasn't wearing the hat when he was in the fort/deer hut. We both asked each other, how do we come together without remembering it and switch the hat? My cousin was asking himself, why don't I remember wearing it out there? I didn't know how I'd gotten it since we'd never crossed our prospective paintball boundaries during the match. He came up with the conclusion that we may have had collective amnesia or something, and that's why we didn't remember switching it. He actually was talking about special forces as he was considering joining the Army within the next year and a half after high school. And is talking about guys that get such intense training they could have been in the trees and switched the hat between us. But that theory didn't take long to be shoved aside, with me anyway, as why would highly trained military personnel be in our woods switching our hat back and forth for fun? We didn't even live next to an army base, at least 200 miles away. As we pondered how the hat switched heads, we also discovered, due to the fact that we only take so long to play a match, and we were going to town that evening to cruise for the ladies, LOL. But we'd lost, at best guess, about 15 to 20 minutes. So then we thought we had experienced collective amnesia and lost time during the collective event and switched the hat between us. Does any of the stories sound logical? No. I've never been able to understand why the hat was clearly visible to each of us at different points within the paintball match, and how we lost 15 to 20 minutes of time without any memory of what happened in that time. We walked into the woods wearing the hat. I walked out of the woods wearing the hat, and we both lost 15 to 20 minutes? Never made sense. Probably never will. I never thought UFO or aliens. I believe in the phenomenon of UFO, UAPs, but I don't think it's little green men. I don't think I was abducted either. There is something in our skies that we have yet to identify, at least for the public citizen. I think the federal government know way more than they are saying, and have for some time. I just chalked it up to a very strange, but most likely an unexplainable event, just not something we could explain. I'd be open to anyone's suggestions. This particular cousin never had a Bigfoot sighting. I had at that point, but it would be many more years before my next sighting. After my second sighting with my son, he told me, "Dad, I never doubted that you saw something when you were a kid, but I just never really thought a real Bigfoot. It's not that I don't believe you, because you're one of the most honest men I know, and not because you're my dad. It's just how you are. I remember you telling me when you see one, you'll know an instant, and you'll never be the same." You were right. I now know why you go into the woods with a rifle/pistol, and sometimes a second pistol, or a BUG, and a hog leg of a knife. I know why when me and my brother got old enough, you taught us how to use a pistol so well, and started making us carry the exact same style setup you did. I'll never go into the woods again without a rifle, pistol, and one big ass knife. I'm going to teach the exact same thing you taught us to my boy as well. Steve, you or anyone with thoughts, your advice or suggestions would be greatly appreciated. Thanks so much, Steve. All the best to you and yours. Scott Smith, the Ozarks Mountains, Missouri. Whew, that was a long one. I got the texts in white with a black background. You get the odd flash and those paragraphs, and it adds up to me on the long ones that are starting to screw up. Sorry about that. I apologize. There's a bunch where I went into using the @ sign instead of spelled at, and a bunch of other things. Sorry, you guys, if I wasn't smooth enough on that one. What are my thoughts? I don't know at this stage of the game. I don't know what the data is, not email, but this stage of the game, I think everybody's heard my thoughts. I think you've done well in sharing with your sons. Number one, that is the most important. You share with the people you care about, no matter what. And if they don't believe you, oh well, at least you're honest and you did your part, right? For the life of me, I cannot wrap my noggin around the fact that so many people have seen this shit and they're back 40 and they keep their mouth shut and they don't tell their family. Holy shit, that's a penalty. That's a misconduct call. That's not good. You know what I mean? Let's just put it into more of a clear perspective. Oh look, there's a 9-foot grizzly bear right behind the chicken coop where Sarah goes every day. I better not tell her. What's the difference, right? They may not believe you, but oh well. You gotta be honest. You gotta be honest today, no matter what. That's my take on shit, but a couple guns and a knife, yeah. I mean, it doesn't make sense to not go armed today where there's possible threat to life, right? Especially living rural, it just isn't. I mean, I had a gun with me the whole time I was gone recently. I'm not far from a gun right now, right? It's no big deal. It's just, we don't have teeth and claws and we can't run as fast as a horse. So we got to fight, possibly, right? And if you don't have teeth and claws and the muscles of a frickin' gorilla, well, what are you gonna do? You gotta even it up, gotta feel secure in a way. I believe you saw what you saw for sure. And as far as the losing time thing, I'm not familiar with it yet, thank God. I hope I don't become familiar with it. Dave Pilatus is gonna be a lot more familiar with the losing time thing. He's probably spent a lot of time investigating it firsthand. And there's guys like Dave that are probably gonna be the ones to be asked those questions about that part of it. We've got a lot of people showing up at loss of time and their clothes on the wrong way. A lot of people. And the weird thing is 9 out of 10 people are going to hear that and then they're going to go up to scribing through Instagram or something, looking at mindless pictures and not even give it a thought. When meanwhile, hundreds if not thousands of people are being reported missing. Hundreds if not thousands are going to report of losing time. Showing up with no clothes or clothes turned around, spun around, put on wrong, and your average human being is just not going to give a shit. That's kind of weird, isn't it? It's kind of weird. People are starting to give a shit, right? There are so many people here. There's so many experiences being shared. And I don't know who agrees with me or not, but I am 100% confident that this is the only way to get truth about anything. Talking to the people. It's the only way. As soon as you get to a group of people, for some strange reason, they think they get to decide as a group what the people should or shouldn't learn or know. Right? Anyway, I gotta go. That's a lot of babble. I got a lot of shit to do. I gotta pick up another guide boat, and I will be guiding a lot more this summer, and I'll let everybody know about that shortly. I just don't know when I want to do it. Well, I shouldn't say when I want to do it, when I can do it, but I'm going to do it some more. All right? There you go. So you just might have a chance to come out, jump in the boat, catch some fish, and pick my brain, and I'll pick yours and see what comes. But I gotta get going, because I have to now road trip and possibly do a 6-hour run in a boat to get it back up to where it will be working shortly. All right, here we go. Enough talk. Let's get on to this day.